Ariat reached out to me and said they had a Western-inspired work boot that has a unique construction that I'd never seen before and fixes the problems that I'm always complaining about with sub $200 boots like the Brunts. I got really interested, so today we're gonna cut apart this RigTek composite toe boot to see what's inside of it and see if it really is something I've never seen before. And thanks to Ariat for sponsoring this video. They've been a long time sponsor of the channel. They've sponsored a handful of videos, and this type of video is the lifeblood of the channel, so I appreciate you guys watching them and supporting these brands and considering buying their boots. So now let's go over the boot information. So the brand is Ariat. The style is the RigTek 8-inch wide square toe composite toe work boot. The color is oiled brown. They weigh just under 2 pounds. They retail for $169 and they're made in Bangladesh. So now let's go over the information that we can gather about this boot before we cut it in half, starting with the upper. So the upper of this boot is made from leather and canvas. The leather is an oil tanned chrome tanned leather, which means there's a ton of oils and different conditioners worked into the leather. It's almost a little bit damp to the touch. It's so oil infused, which means it's a lot less maintenance. You only have to oil these every 2 or 3 months tops if you're really wearing them. And I really like the look of a canvas and leather boot. I like the contrasting textures. I like the contrasting colors. And one of the benefits of a canvas and leather boot is it's a lot more breathable than a full leather boot, but you don't have quite as much waterproofness unless it has a waterproof lining, which this boot does not. And speaking of the lining, this is a fabric lined boot with reinforcement at the eyelets that's leather, and the internal counter cover is leather as well. So the vital components are reinforced with leather, and since this is a canvas boot, you almost have to have lining on the inside to give it some more structure to it. So I usually don't like fabric liners, but for this and the price point, I think it's fine. But I'm really happy to see that leather counter cover on the inside, because so many sub $200 boots have like a synthetic counter cover or no counter cover at all. Next to the toe, so this is a composite toe that's safety certified, and people like composite toes over steel toes because they don't get quite as cold and they don't get quite as hot, because steel has a lot higher thermal conductivity. So it just zaps the heat out of your feet, and it makes your feet either super hot or super cold. But composite toes don't do that quite as much. But the big downside to a composite toe is that they have to make them a lot thicker to get the same amount of strength. And so a lot of times you end up with a little bit more bulbous toe on a composite toe boot. And as for the shape of this toe, I love these square toe safety toe boots, because for my foot, these square toes give me just a little bit more wiggle room. They don't quite cut into my side of my foot as much. Next to the midsole and the outsole, which is one single piece of polyurethane material. And the benefits of polyurethane, or PU, is it has a lot more squish and a lot more comfort, but it just doesn't have the same durability and longevity as like a harder rubber like we see in some of the Vibram outsoles. So it's really similar to all the other polyurethane outsoles you see out there. You're trading longevity for the comfort of that extra squish. And finally, to the construction. So this is the big question of the video, because it says that on their website it's a Goodyear welted boot, but I don't see a midsole on here, and we already know that the midsole and outsole is a single layer of polyurethane. I would have guessed from the outside that it was a cemented construction with a fake Goodyear welt, and so I'm not really sure how it's Goodyear welted and how it's structured. So really the only way to tell is by cutting it in half. So let's cut this thing in half. Okay, we got it chopped. Let's see what's inside. So right off the bat, there's no loose and floppy layers on the inside, because in almost all the sub $200 boots we've seen, my biggest complaint is that all those layers are independent, which means every time you take a step, anytime you move the boot, those layers are slightly moving and slowly wearing themselves out, which just isn't great for the longevity of the boot. So the fact that all these layers are really well cemented together is a really good sign. But to the big question of this video that we're trying to answer, what's going on with the construction of this boot? Well, the answer is it's a combination of a Goodyear welted construction and a direct attach construction, where the upper of the boot is built just like a regular Goodyear welted boot, where the upper, the welt, and the rib underneath the insole is all sewn together with a single stitch, creating that upper that is then later sewn or attached to the midsole and the outsole. But with this boot being a partially direct attached construction, they build that upper bit, but instead of filling that void with cork and then gluing on a midsole and then slapping the outsole on, they put the upper portion into a big steel mold, and then liquid hot polyurethane is injected into the mold, curing itself to the upper portion of the boot and creating the outsole tread and everything, causing that really strong attachment to the upper portion of the boot, and that's why you don't see any loose floppy layers on the inside. So it's a really interesting way of combining the strength of a Goodyear welted upper and the comfort of a cemented construction, with a lot of the risk of that delamination decreased significantly. But the big issue with this style of construction is it's not nearly as easy to resole as a full Goodyear welted boot, because of the way the polyurethane is molded to the boot itself. Like, it is attached all the way in every single square inch, because it's liquid polyurethane. And one thing I do like about this boot is they put a stiff lasting board in here. It's some sort of composite material, because a lot of times with these polyurethane outsoles, they get really sloppy and kind of spongy on the side. So if you step wrong, the boot doesn't give you any support. It sometimes kind of rolls because of that polyurethane squishing. But with this stiff lasting board, it at least somewhat stabilizes the boot. The only downside is it's not going to compress like a piece of leather will, so you don't get that custom footprint inside of your boot. So pros of this boot: comfortable outsole, breathable canvas and leather upper, the more comfortable square composite toe, and the hybrid construction we just talked about, and this boot is under $200. The cons of this boot: safety toes just are never as comfortable as a soft toe. They're always going to be a little bit uncomfortable and not flex the same way. These are going to be harder to resole, and the polyurethane outsole will just never last as long as a hard rubber outsole. So if you're looking for a lightweight safety toe boot, this seems to be a pretty good option, especially for under $200. But keep in mind, you're sacrificing the longevity and durability of this boot to get that really soft, squishy outsole. So let me know what you guys think of this boot, and if you've had these boots, your experience with them. And let me know if I missed anything inside of here, because I think this is a pretty good boot for that $200 price point. You know, it's hard to, no matter what, anything under $200, there's got to be compromises in some way. But I think this boot does a good job of finding the right compromises to get to the right price point. But let me know what you think. And thanks for watching, and thanks to Ariat for sponsoring this video. If you're considering these boots, be sure to click the link in the description. And thanks for everything you guys do. See ya.
Oh my